to the MMA Split podcast. I'm Matt.
I'm Josh.
We're here to talk about everything that happened in a highly eventful UFC 267 card on morning and afternoon for the American viewers. Very nicely placed in perfect evening spot for the European viewers, which was appreciated. And a lot to talk about. Huge, dominant displays and victories for certain fighters. A couple of really great fights, a couple of big upsets, and certainly some storylines that have to be discussed. We will also have a little look at what happened in PFLs. Was it the final event of the PFL season or the
PFL Championship? And we forgot to kind of talk about it last week. That was on us.
We haven't given PFL a lot of consistent love this season. That's definitely sort of phase two of the year two of the podcast, is to be a little bit better at our non-UFC related MMA coverage. We're going to correct that a little bit. I haven't seen anything. Obviously, I'm aware of what happened to Clarissa Shields. That's going to be in the news section, some of the backlash with her and Jake Paul. But let's talk about what was definitely the most noteworthy thing that happened across the weekend, which is UFC 267. We had two title fights, a couple of featured bouts against, maybe not both Dagestani fighters, but certainly guys that are getting a lot of love for a sort of wrestling, grappling heavy style from a certain region. And I mean, where else can we start but the main event? It was two old dogs going in there. We didn't really give Glover a huge opportunity to win this at 42. And he proved us all wrong, man. He did what he needed to do. He executed a perfect game plan. At 42 years old, he's the second oldest ever champion in the UFC and the oldest first-time champion. Obviously, Randy Couture was 46 or something, but he was regaining a belt. He'd already won. He wasn't winning a belt for the first time. The guy's a beast, man. I mean, his whole story from not getting the visa to losing the title fight in 2014 to the Rumble knockout. You just didn't think there was a way back, and he's grinded his way through and didn't really face that much difficulty. If I'm perfectly honest, I don't think it was that difficult to get the win, particularly once he had him on the ground.
No, and to be honest, it just kind of brought into right into focus the fact that you don't know what you got till it's gone. And John Jones is a huge piece of shit, but he was a phenomenal champion. And then after Jones, we had DC. But since DC went up to heavyweight, retired, Jones gone up to heavyweight, you realize that past those top two, there wasn't really a lot left there. And all those other kind of big name fighters, Gustafsson, who I think was Teixeira's most recent loss. Who else? Like Uzdemir was fighting and losing on the cards. All these previous title fighters, even fucking Rumble's off in Bellator now. He's just kind of outlasted everything. And he's been able to do, put the right wins in at the right time. Fairy tale ending. And I'm not saying that Glover Teixeira does not deserve to be 205 champ. He absolutely does. We've got another problem here. Because, how many more fights is he going to take? At best, he's just kind of a classy, kind of makes you believe in whimsy and karma and good things happening kind of champ. But he's not going to be around for 4 or 5 years. He's not going to be a dominant, cleaning out the division kind of light heavyweight. And that's just what I say. This is a good fight, two good fighters. I really thought Blachowicz was going to give Teixeira more problems. I knew that once he got it to the ground, it was very much going to be Teixeira's world. I didn't think he was going to get it that easy or that early. It was just a fairy tale ending for him.
I couldn't agree more. What I would say is, and I think this is very much how I feel, we were talking about, and it's interesting, when we were doing the pick show, we were talking about the fact that Blachowicz has arguably beat, fresher, more in prime competition. He's made it look reasonably easy coming out of a lot of these fights as an underdog, unscathed on his title run and in defense of his belt. And in a funny way, I almost feel like that served against him a little bit. He hadn't actually had to really sort of dig deep in any of those fights on the win streak. He just sort of done what he needed to do right from the off and control the fight. And I think from a mental side, it didn't maybe prepare him as well for when things didn't go his direction early on. I do feel, and this is related to where my logic was on the pick as well. I think Jan Blachowicz at his best can hang and could beat and defend the belt against some of these really talented young up-and-coming guys. I look at Glover and I think you had a really good game plan. You had a really good night. It's a great story. I don't think you beat a particularly switched on or mentally, you weren't fighting Jan at his best that night. I think for me, that felt very apparent. He seemed really nervous, very defensive, overly cautious. He was giving him so much respect on the takedown, which is not to say that it's not merited, but I think his whole mentality to the fight was very negative from the off. And, it's interesting. This is the first fight in this run that he's had where he's been the favorite. And I almost wonder whether or not that change of mentality kind of served him poorly to a certain extent, that once it came to the opponent he was expected to beat, he almost seemed like he was fighting not to lose rather than to win. And, for a guy like Glover who knows this is his one shot, last chance, I just don't think that was the right mentality to take. I think you needed to take that victory from the off. And he didn't do that. And, it's devastating for Jan. It's fantastic for Glover. I'm delighted for Glover, but the best way that I can frame this, and, maybe I'm still not giving Glover the credit he's due, but I still can't help but look at this and think, okay, who did I think had the better chance of fighting and beating Yuri Prochazka? I'd probably say Jan, but then my mind flips to this. Maybe I'm just not seeing it here. Maybe in Glover, this is a guy who at 42 years old has stripped away all of the unnecessary fat. He has focused his game entirely on what he does best to win. And maybe I'm just not appreciating that. Maybe in the awkwardness and the directness, there's a sort of simplistic genius in what he's accomplishing on this run. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, Josh.
I agree with you, but it's almost kind of like Damian Maia just passed his peak at 170. Yeah, sure, guys know how to not get into that trouble and how to stay out of it, but saying it and doing it is very different. And if someone does have a bit of a bad night, a switched on veteran like Teixeira is going to be able to capitalize much the same way Maia used to. Blachowicz did. Yeah, he had a bit of a bad night. I don't know how much it'd be a change in mentality, because to be honest, all of his fights have had, like in this run, have had their own reasons for being intensely stressful. The Corey Anderson fight, you can't have a second loss to a guy when you're both vying for a title shot, you get boxed out. The Izzy fight, you don't want to lose to a guy that much smaller than you and have a two-weight champ logging up the whole sort of.
He still wasn't the favorite. I was just going to say that he still wasn't the favorite in those fights.
No, I know, but
that mentality of people expecting to not expecting, of being able to surprise people rather than meet expectations, I think was
exactly. So what I'm saying is, if anything, the pressure has always been quite intense for this guy. The Izzy fight, you don't want to lose to a guy that's that much smaller than you. It's not going to look good. The Reyes fight, you don't want to, and that was a good fight with a bit of back and forth there. You were expected to put away a guy this chinny, but you still come in as like the underdog. For every fight, there's a reason why he doesn't want to get written off. And he started his career, was it like 2-3 at one point in the UFC? 4. Yeah. Shit, was it maybe 1-3 before the second? I really can't fucking remember. But I don't think it's a change in mentality. I think sometimes you just have kind of a bad night. And, I didn't see it happening like this. But you're fair play Glover. And I know what you mean about the Prochazka fight. Because you kind of think, well, on paper, you sort of expect that this dynamic, huge, explosive striker is just going to, bully his way through and not give Teixeira much of a chance. He's old. He plods a bit. He's flat-footed. Hypothetically, he's there to be hit. But if Teixeira can get him down, it's an interesting one. I'm glad that we got the next fight lined up, though.
Yeah, and this is where I feel like I'm kind of switching, because I really do think, and some of it's the age, some of it is, the wear and tear, how they trained when they were younger, all of these factors, the level of competition they fought for the length of time. But I still think that Jan is a guy that is in his prime to a certain extent, maybe towards the end of that prime, but I still see a guy that I think can compete with the very best. With Glover, it's just you don't, even if you look back in like the Thiago Santos fight, you just thought there's no way he's not getting knocked out. And he almost did, but he still fucking gets a hold of them. And you look at the Yuri Prochaska fight, you think, does a lot of wild shit. It only takes one spinning elbow, ducks under, has completely lost his balance, momentum, gets down on the ground. And yeah, it's, you know, and this is where I suppose I'm sort of, and I'm very split on this. I don't know how I think about this because, you know, on the one hand, I'm thinking Jan had a bad night and maybe it's just that right style matchup. Like you say, the guys that would have given Glover the biggest problems aren't in the division anymore. And I think maybe it's just one of those things where you get older and you just realize, like, okay, all this X, Y, Z, this, that, the other, it's all great. It's completely unnecessary for how I'm going to win this fight. We strip all of that away and we focus on what I need to do. And maybe that's the key. Maybe he's just, when everyone else is trying to make things more complicated, he simplified things and is direct and effective. And if it, you know, I suppose that's the thing with MMA. If it works and it's effective, it's not wrong.
Yeah. Well, also he hasn't got the body for a convoluted game plan. You know, that you don't want to tell him like be in, be out. You know, make sure he's taking 2 steps for every time you move once. Make sure you're throwing twice and reply every time he hits once. He hasn't got the body for it anymore. He might have the stamina, but he just hasn't got the speed. So yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, he's switching up to just bread and butter. What do I do best? Let's get the fight there. Let's just make it a short night. He kind of has to. I mean, as you get older, it's very hard to become, you know, more varied in your approach as a fighter. I mean, shit, you know, Dillashaw's not the only one that's doing EPO. He's just the first twat to, in a big way, to get popped in the UFC.
True.
I think it might be the first EPO in the UFC. I think typically it's been like TRT and was it Ostrazine and
yeah, I haven't heard of somebody getting banned for it beforehand. It's probably happened in MMA. I'm sure there's some regional or, you know, some other promotion that maybe has had a flag, but it's a rare one. It's a harder one to test as well. It doesn't pop up in the standard test that they do kind of in fight week and all around that time. You have to delve a little bit deeper. Yeah, here's the other factor as well, and this touches on you don't know what you've got till it's gone. It's fucking hard to defend a belt multiple times because you will have a bad night. You will have the odd one where it's just a bad matchup for you. You don't come in with the right this, the right that. And maybe that's just going to be the effect that when a great champion does leave and no longer be in the division, it's going to be a guy pops up, loses the belt. A guy pops up, has one defense, maybe 2, loses the belt, because the rest of the guys are far more even than the one guy who stood above them beforehand.
Oh, for sure. You know, welterweight kind of took a little time to find a division, find a champ after PSG. Had Big Rig, had Lawler, fucking Woodley. But yeah, man, light heavyweight. I think there's talent coming up, but it's where the old guard was in there for a while, and the talent coming up had to fight amongst themselves. There wasn't too much kind of washing in between the two. There was just a few fighters streaking through, like Smith and Santos, but yeah,
even think Dominic Reyes, man, who in many ways had exactly the kind of body type and style to fight John Jones. In many ways was one of these guys that didn't come up to be the light heavyweight champion. He based his game on, I need to be able to beat John Jones. Yeah. And in reality, probably did beat John Jones that night, although the judges didn't agree. He's lost his next 3 fights. And I think that just kind of shows the point that, and this is maybe, you know, Judge, I kind of just thought of that because you stumbled on Hendricks, another guy who arguably beat the GOAT of his division, although maybe the judges didn't see it that way. But just when he gets the title and you think, okay, it's going to be his reign now, if he almost pretty much beat GSP, who's going to touch him? You realize, no, the rest of these guys are very, very even. Very even. I think, to be honest, we're going to see it at least maybe for a couple of shifts with the lightweight division until a certain somebody that we're going to talk about lower down the card comes into effect. because that was terrifying. Anything else you want to say on the main event before we move down?
Oof. I just feel like with the state of affairs, if Blachowicz can win a couple of fights, I wouldn't be surprised to see him fighting for the title again soon. I have no idea who I'm picking, Prohaska, Teixeira, but that's the problem for fight week. That's not a problem for today.
He seemed devastated when he lost. He really did. Like, I wonder if it makes me wonder whether or not there was something going on, like the speed at which he tapped. There might have been.
It was a quick tap.
There might have been, and he's a black belt as well. This isn't somebody who would have just felt lost on the ground. You'd think that he'd, there's little things, I don't know. I think something was up, and I think he's not the kind of guy that would ever make excuses. I think he'd keep that to himself. But I think there's a reason why he's so frustrated about it. And maybe it was just a mental slip, but I don't think he's gone. Like I said, I still think he's in his prime. I think he's got a style that's going to do well against a lot of these guys. I think he'd do well against Anthony Smith. I think he'd do well against Rakic. A rematch against Santos, I think that would be an interesting fight to get together.
Yeah, definitely. He's got a lot of options. I just hope that they don't start giving him the younger options kind of coming up through the rankings.
There aren't that many, mate. And
there's not a lot, but with Contender Series, there's a lot more kind of lying in the background than you kind of initially appreciate. I mean, shit, isn't RoboCop 205?
Yeah, but he wasn't Contender Series. He came off LFA.
No, I know. But my point is that the same as, before Reyes got his title shot, there was kind of the old guards, and you were just waiting for all the top five to kind of get their crack at John Jones. And there was a lot of younger fighters kind of being forced to fight other up-and-coming talent. None of them kind of get a chance to sort of go up against each other. It's not like the lightweight division where there's so much fucking depth that these top five guys have to reach down to like number 15, number 12. And it means that guys just outside the top 10 are fighting completely unranked fighters. Light heavyweight hasn't had enough depth. Kind of had the old guard in there, the big name value for a long time. They sold pay-per-views. It was fucking easy. No one had a problem with it. But yeah, I think we could potentially be surprised by how much young talent they got coming through, and a light heavyweight as well.
I know what you mean. The only thing I'd say with light heavyweight, and it is something I've noticed, a lot of the guys that seem to come through Contender Series at that higher weight, I don't see as many of them making the same kind of immediate impact as we see in like lightweight or welterweight or bantamweight when they come through. Maybe it's because, like you say, there's less depth, so they're not tested really much at all until they get to that, watermark, and then it's an absolute baptism of fire. I think Ryan Spann, for example, would be a good example of this. And
yeah, well, the only one that's kind of going against that trend would be Chris Daukaus. I mean,
True.
even with the middleweights, it's a bit sort of up and down with the Contender Series alum. It's kind of sort of lightweight and below that you're really seeing them kind of do well. But yeah, and Chris Daukaus, it's kind of the only big one to come out that I can think of right now. I'm hoping I'm forgetting someone.
Well, but my point is, we're going to learn a lot about Chris Daukaus in December.
That's true. But yeah, man, Contender Series, they are bringing in a lot of talent. It makes it harder and harder to do the prelims because there's so many debutants coming through, or like the first or second fight and haven't fought for a couple of years. It's such a pain in the ass sometimes, but they are getting a lot of talent.
Let's move down this card because we've got to talk about fight of the night here. We had a feeling it was going to be the best fight on the card. It stylistically was an excellent matchup, and Corey Sandhagen and Peter Yan lit the crowd up. In many ways, the main event felt very anticlimactic, not due to any fault of their own, but because how do you raise the emotions again after such a spectacular display of heart, endurance, skill, technique, willingness to win from both guys, adjustments being made multiple times from both guys throughout the rounds, momentum shifts, and really, in the end, Peter Yan establishing that until proven otherwise, he is the best bantamweight on the planet.
Oh man, for sure. I mean, this fight was amazing. Like you say, it was a really technical fight, but it wasn't technical in the sense that there was much of a feeling out process, or that either guy ever really kind of tried to just sort of slow down and take control of the fight. It was fought at a pretty frenetic pace, and everything had some hate behind it. These boys were really throwing and landing. Fuck me. I think in some ways, Sandhagen, I know you said like you want to see him do some more wild shit. You know, the exact same thing that lost in the Dillashaw fight could win him this one. And like, it's not that that's a bad strategy, but fuck, you know, Jan can just keep pushing and pushing the tempo. And if you're kind of loading up on a lot of shots and expending a lot of energy early on in a 5-round fight, man, Jan does not slow down. It's like that fucking line from oh sorry, go ahead.
No, say the line, go on.
What's it, that Tom Cruise film, Days of Thunder, where he's always going too fast. And they're telling him, hey, you can't go faster than that, you're gonna fuck the car, you're gonna run the wheels. And it's like that race near the end where he's like starting to like kind of overtake everyone. They're like, we keep telling you, Cole, slow down, don't go that fast. He's like, I'm not going faster, everyone else is going slower. You know, Jan just kind of pushes that fucking pace where everyone just kind of slows down.
Corey was exhausted, I thought, by halfway through round 4. You could see that he the pressure was building up. And also I think, you know, this is what makes Jan so tricky to fight, is that he approaches this from such a boxing mentality, you know, which is get the reads early, don't expend too much, pressure without throwing a lot of volume, and figure out what the guy's doing, and then learn and adjust. And by rounds 3, by rounds 4, by round 5, you've got his timing, you've got his reads, you've got his movement, you understand the combinations, and you're just able to establish your game plan and land hard shots and counter. It's so difficult to deal with. You know, I thought Corey had the right approach. He almost, you know, this is the thing, I always felt that he was going to have to win. Maybe the first 3 rounds were going to be critical. And he almost won that second round. But it's just Jan just managed to land enough to clinch it at the end. And then the third round, he was looking really good. And then Jan just makes sure he lands that critical shot to swing the momentum in his direction. And then from rounds 4 and 5 onwards, I think it was always going to be an uphill battle. But Corey still ate some huge shots, landed flying knees. Jan was landing spinning elbows. That fucking wheel kick to the face at the end.
Oh, right at the end.
You know, this was
a nice setup on that.
There was so much technique, so many good, you know, and this wasn't just a slugfest. You know, the defense from both guys was on point. You know, the movement, the understanding, the slipping from Corey Sandhagen, the high guard being really effective from Jan. It was just an excellent fight. Excellent fight. Jan's the best right now, man. What can you say? He's, until proven otherwise, you know, unless Sterling has made some monumental adjustments, or this neck surgery that he got when it recovers completely transforms his ability to land power, I don't see how he can get Jan to the ground. Don't see how he can beat him standing up. Looking down, I mean, it's a tall order for any of these guys, man. Maybe Rob Font.
I was just about to fucking say Rob Font.
Just because there's similar styles, really good boxing fundamentals. Rob Font's got the length, you know.
And he also appreciates how to steal the momentum. So he understands much as Jan does, you know, when to take it up a notch, when to really try and wear on the other guy, when the other guy's doing well and you need to steal the momentum back to get that round. They've both got that kind of gamesmanship about them. They understand the importance, you know, of just kind of everything you're thinking in the moment. How do I change what the other guy's thinking? You know, this guy might be beating me up and maybe I land a good body shot, take the wind out of his sails and then steal the round. You know, they got that kind of thinking behind them. Rob Font would be an interesting one. Not a favorite, but an interesting one. And then, of course, you got Sly's boy, fucking the Sugar Show.
He's down the road, but I mean, there's 4, you know, I think he's got 4 fights before he gets there, particularly at the pace that he wants to go at. You know what I mean? What's he fighting? Who's he fighting at 268 or 269? Julian Paiva, number 15 ranked guy?
Yeah.
You know, I imagine if he wins that, and if Marlon Vera beats Frankie Edgar, I think they probably look to do the rematch for that then. And assuming that O'Malley was to win that, then you're looking at, your Dashvilis, your Moraes, your all of those guys. So there's a lot of ground for him to cover. Honestly, the only person I think would really have enough to make me think something interesting could happen here is Triple C if he was to come back at bantamweight.
Yeah, I think if he comes back, it's going to be at featherweight, though.
I agree. But it doesn't change the fact that I think just because because I think the wrestling is so good, where Sterling and where Sandhagen can't get him to the ground and keep him there. I think that's an option for Cejudo to be able to do. And I don't know, I just think he's just got that quality where he's got enough self-belief and a willingness to deal with the chips being down at multiple points in the fight and still find a way to win. And he's done it against some of the all-time greats. I think you'd have to...
Mouse. I was going to say, sorry, like just thinking about the comebacks, like the one against Moraes, impressive. But the one against Mighty Mouse where, his foot is just dead weight at the end of his leg for maybe 2-3 minutes of that first round. Was it the second round? That
first round.
Yeah. So Hudo has just a shit ton of heart. He really competes. I mean, that's how you get a gold medal.
Yeah. And I also think him being smaller than Jan and having that speed and that explosiveness, I think could make a huge difference. I think Jan closes the distance so well, but if Cejudo is faster than him, I think he'd be the only guy in the division that could really sort of like avoid those counters, being able to get in and get out. And I just think the wrestling changes everything. We haven't seen Jan have to deal with a real top-level wrestler because it's bantamweight and there's just not a lot of those guys in that division. And so we've seen people try to take him down, but, and obviously Sterling's an excellent grappler, but he's not known for his takedowns.
No. Although I would say, like, even though I'm definitely picking Jan in the rematch, Sterling is always a threat. It's kind of in the same way that I didn't think Volkanovski was going to be able to kind of dominate Ortega like that. You can be wrong about these things sometimes. I don't see a world in which Aljo is able to get Jan's back. But if for any reason it did fucking happen, Aljo is going to finish that quickly. He's always a threat, but very unlikely. But yeah, man, this division is his to reign for a little bit. As long as he understands, downed opponents, needs to face, don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
They will book that Sterling fight. He clearly doesn't want it. I don't blame him. But he's going to sign the contract for it. And, I mean, really, from what I understood, Sterling was going to be ready by November. So I don't think it's really just on Jan recovering, I think, and they can book that for hopefully the springtime next year. And we finally get the conclusion of that. Cracking fight, best fight in the night. And I'll be honest, I think the card, particularly the main card, needed this fight because most of the other fights on this card were fairly one-sided. And I don't think there was any fight that was more one-sided. Maybe one other fight, but certainly the second most one-sided fight was Dan Hooker against Islam Makhachev. I am not a professional MMA coach. I'm not a professional MMA fighter. I've never had to fight a human being from Dagestan. However, one of the two things that I kind of felt, generally from the experience I've watched, that's reasonably critical against fighting these guys, is that however much leg kicks might be a solid part of your game, it's really not going to be a sensible tool to throw, because if you fuck up one of those kicks, you are on the fucking ground. And I just think Dan Hooker paid for that. And I think he paid for a wrestling camp, for a training camp that was 4 weeks long, where they might have worked on a lot of takedown defense, but I don't think they did the kind of jiu-jitsu work and preparation and repetition that he probably needed for those situations once it got to the ground. And I think that really showed, because Dan Hooker's better than what he showed on the ground. there should have been warning signs that Kimura was coming. And I think he kind of just sort of didn't quite seem like he knew what to do at the right moments.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of tried to concede it like he was going to let him sweep him or just, create the distance to get up. But, Machev readjusted, got his leg round. I think is, Dan was saying before the fight, he was just going to be concerned with his game plan and doing what he needed to do to win the fight. And I think, as much as the leg kick's a bad idea in hindsight, you can't not throw him at all. And I can see thinking, get a good one in early, maybe compromise his movement for a little bit early on. You might get a chance to soften him up with some strikes before you really get into the meat of the fight. But this was always going to be a huge risk.
It was. These guys are so good at grappling that if you are a guy that's a striker built upon keeping the fight standing, you have not got a hope in hell. You have got to have a really strong fundamental grasp of wrestling and grappling and jiu-jitsu to be able to have any kind of hope, just to be able to be in a position to inflict your own offense standing up. And, it's a shame the way it happened. The kick doesn't land properly, he gets caught, he trips over, it's over before it began. I think, there's 3 guys on this main card, 2 of which we've already talked about. I think the most frustrating thing for Jan, for Dan, and for Li Jingliang, who we're going to get, is all 3 of these guys are waking up today, on the plane ride home, whatever, feeling like they didn't really get started. They didn't really get a chance to feel like they kind of actually got going. And I think that's really true with Dan Hooker. I think his 2 losses that he's had this year, the most frustrating thing for him about it is that he'll feel like he just never even got a chance to get started.
Yeah, but he knew that coming into this one. This is kind of how a lot of people thought the fight was going to go. Yeah, look, he can bounce back and he can bounce back quick.
Uppercuts and knees, man, that's got to be in your mindset going in. Anytime you see the slightest movement from them, uppercuts and knees, drill it, practice it.
It's good, and when they land, it's great. But you can't expect to do it for every single takedown shot because you become very easy to fake out at that point. Even just cocking the back leg.
He threw a kick that got caught.
Oh, this is what I'm saying. You don't want to just sit back and wait for him to shoot. If I'm Dan Hooker and I'm going in with this mentality that I am going to knock this guy out and I'm going to stick with my game plan, I'm not going to spend any amount of time at all waiting for the other guy to do something. We'll get into it later on with the Leroy Murphy one. If you know that the shot's coming in and the guy's waiting to read you for a certain way, so for Leroy Murphy, it's following through so that he's now like in the not orthodox, but in the standard. I can't think of the fucking words today. Not in southpaw and fucking orthodox stance, and that's the cue for like the other guy to shoot in. Yeah, then you throw the fucking knee. But other than having the opportunity to kind of dictate when the shot's coming, you don't even want to think about these uppercuts and these knees just because you're going to get faked out. It's just a bad idea.
I do agree with you, but the interjection I'd make is how many times did Dan Hooker throw the leg kick before the one got caught and he got taken down? I can't
even remember.
It was more than 4. So I completely agree with you that maybe it was 3, but the point is that I agree with you that, yeah, you still want to chuck the odd one in, but that doesn't mean that you can throw it the same way that you would if you're fighting Dustin Poirier, if you're fighting Nasrat Haqparast, because it only takes one of those. Each one of those, even body kicks, even high kicks, they're all a real risk-reward calculation that you have to make when the guy's that good at keeping you on the ground, particularly somebody like Makhachev, where at least with Khabib, there was a thought of like, okay, round 1, I'm going to be beaten up and this is tired out and this is going to be horrible, but I'm going to make it to round 2 and then I've still got my puncher's chance. It's, he didn't, I would have liked to have seen him try and establish more with the hands, more with the jab, and he didn't really get to do that. He's going to be bitterly frustrated. I think I really respect Dan and he's become a fan favorite for good reasons, but he's got to stop taking these fights when all the odds are against him. I know that the situation in New Zealand dictated that he wanted to stay out, and then once he stayed out, he needed to get a fight. But his two losses he's had this year, the one thing in common is that he hasn't had his coaches there. He hasn't had his proper preparation. He's taken on a dangerous elite guy on short notice when the other guy's more prepared, who's a bad star matchup for him. And I think that, you can do that when it's hack pressed. When you're fighting one of the up and coming guys, one of the good but not elite guys, yeah, okay, fly out last minute, cut weight on the plane, still get it done because you're the fucking man. Of course. You're not going to do that against the very best people. And I know that 12 losses on his record or 11 losses on his record doesn't feel like each loss matters that much anymore, or it doesn't hold the same weight as when a guy's got 2 or 3. But it doesn't mean that you should be chucking them away. Each fight that you have where you're not fully prepared is a situation where you could get knocked out, like the Michael Chandler fight. Could have got a serious break to your upper arm in that fight. You weren't in a position to tap. So you're fortunate that you had a good referee who was watching the situation and understood that a verbal tap or a scream was going to be the end of that right there and then.
Yeah.
So, your health and body's on the line, man. Your career's on the line. You can be one of the best. But whatever slim chance you had, I think was deprived by the fact that you came into this clearly without and how could you? It was 4 weeks. How could you prepare for a Makhachev on 4 weeks? Truly prepare.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing though. Like, if you Hooker, who else were you going to fight? And I think that just doing the UFC a solid on this one probably puts him in first place for the Tony Ferguson sweepstakes. So I'm hoping, that he'll fight Tony, and Tony won't do anything batshit crazy between it. It will almost still look like a big name on the record, a good bounce back win if he wins it. I mean, he's kind of right back in that sort of conversation of being 2 or 3 fights away again. But yes, you say, he has thrown this one away. It really is. He kind of, with the Hackfrast one, Hackfrast was going through so much more that week that it was almost worth cutting weight on the plane.
Yeah.
It's been a weird year for Dan. And it's probably going to be the last with the whole team moving over to America. I think It's the last time we're going to see him have to really take that kind of cavalier attitude towards who's cornering him. But
I think particularly for that team as well, because you look at what was happening pre-pandemic. If one guy fought, there was 2 or 3 other guys on the card from City Kickboxing as well, and they all came over. One of the real standout moments I remember from UFC 245 when Volkanovski was fighting Max for the first time is Volkanovski is there before the prelims start. Everyone else makes their entrance, just as the main card's starting when they're on the main event, co-main event. He was there helping with the whole team, helping everybody get ready. It's the same with Izzy. It's the same with all of them. And so I think when you have that kind of family in it together bond, when you don't have that with you, it's so different. How you're not going to perform in the same way. You don't have the same kind of support structure around you. What a difference it must make having Izzy there for your whole training camp, having Brad Riddell there for your whole training camp, giving you these different looks, helping you with that mentality, pushing you on. And that's what Makhachev had. His training camp, he had Khabib there the whole time. He had the whole rest of the team there the whole time. He had that support. And, let's talk about Makhachev, because I don't want to make it sound like we're saying that this is all just Dan Hooker, being underprepared, because regardless of that, Makhachev put in a performance, that was spectacular. And the only reason we're saying that is because we're saying that Makhachev is so good that you have to be 100% to even have a sniff of a chance. And he proved it, man. He's a finisher. He's elite. He's sensing it's his moment. And quite frankly, Dustin Poirier, win this fucking belt in December, mate, because I don't like your chances against this guy. Just have your moment. You know what I mean? Box ticks. Who gives a fuck if you then lose the belt to another fucking one of these Dagestani monsters? Have your moment, because it's not looking good after that. This guy is, he might be better than Khabib.
Oof.
In terms of pure ability at this exact moment, not in terms of career and legacy and consistency. I'm talking about efficiency and ability at this exact moment in time.
Yeah. I mean, the guy has a ton of ability, and in training, maybe he looks more talented than Khabib, but Khabib was consistent with putting those performances in, whereas Makhachev has been a consistent finisher lately, but he has these moments, you know. Decision against an aging Nick Lentz, knocked out by Adriano Martins, Chris Wade decision.
I
Some of the
agree.
other
It's
decisions, yeah,
not.
Dabi Ramos, Arman Sarukian, these aren't bad fighters, but you know, yeah, there's definitely times where he looks like he's just kind of doing enough, almost like a Yoel Romero, you know, just enough to win the fight.
But yeah, he hasn't got the dominance of Khabib without a doubt. But maybe that's shifting with a performance like this, and
Maybe.
he's got the submission threat is far more aggressive. He's looking to end the fight far more quickly than what we saw with Khabib, who was kind of happy just to sort of soften you, beat you up, maul you for as long as humanly possible. And there's certainly a creativity in the ways that he can get the takedown. You know, we didn't see it in this fight because Ben threw a leg kick. We've discussed this. But he's got judo takedowns. He's got classic wrestling double leg takedowns. He's got single legs against the cage. He's got a variety of ways to get the fight where he needs it to be. And you know what? The striking isn't bad. Again, we didn't see it in this fight, but look at the Thiago Moises fight. His that first round, he was almost proving a point, and he was outlanding Moises on the feet.
Yeah, and I definitely think he's a good fighter. If he carries on like he has been carrying on, then that fight with the winner of Poirier and Charlie Olives, that's going to be an insane fight. But I just think there's so many guys that give him problems. I think Gaethje gives him problems. I think Chandler gives him problems.
Well, that's why he can't get the next shot. There's got to be a fight or two between. And I actually think it's a real shame that RDA was injured for this fight, because we've discussed this a few times. We still think RDA is one of those guys that has some of these questions, you know, that need answered. You know, in many ways, this fight is not dissimilar. It's an upgraded version of when he fought Drew Dober. It's like, okay, you've got a good fighter. Obviously, Dan's a really good fighter. Drew Dober's just a good fighter, but it's like ground game isn't their strength, not their strength. It's a style matchup with a recipe. Once you factor RDA, you know, stocky, strong, at lightweight, he's not getting bullied around. Like, you know, think about it. He's dealt with Kamaru Usman. It's, you know, he's had experience of what it really feels like to fight bigger guys doing this. He's stockier. He can, you know, he's got that southpaw stance as well. There's the jiu-jitsu threat. There's a lot of things that intrigue me about that fight. And I don't think they're going to book it. I think they might look at that and go, we can only try this so many fucking times and have it not work out. You know, sometimes it's just not meant to be, which is a shame. But who knows, man? Maybe he gets the winner of Gaethje Chandler. Maybe he gets the loser of Gaethje Chandler.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think it's probably going to be the loser, because I think the winner of that one's going to be looking for the next title shot.
Maybe.
We'll see. We'll see, man. It's a fun fucking time for 55.
It's a really fun time for 55. Cracking fight. Going down the card, Volkov beat Tabor. Okay, I was wrong on this one, but I'll say this. Tabor had the right game plan, and he was almost executing it well. He just couldn't quite maintain it. And Volkov is a gigantic human being that you cannot take down unless you are Curtis Blades. So I think that had a huge effect as well. But I don't regret that pick, because he gave it his fucking college best, as they say. Listen, Volkov wins. You know, this certainly wasn't one of his more impressive wins, but I think after the Garn loss, it's just, you win this fight. You know what I mean? You win this fight and you get back on track. And he did that without really taking any grand risk. Maybe you can't blame him for that.
No, and he's kind of in that same sort of seat that Teixeira was not so long ago, where just keep winning fights, just keep winning the fights they give you, and you know, just pray to fuck that all the champions fuck off and retire, and all the really dangerous guys in that weight class do something else for a little bit. Let you sneak in there, have your fairy tale moment.
Him versus Stipe would be a fun fight.
I feel like Stipe is going to take him down a lot because Stipe mixes it in with the, apart from that Ngannou fight, Stipe usually mixes it in with the striking really well. And Stipe's got power moving backwards as well. So for Volkov, it's kind of like you can't just stand there and you can't keep moving forward. You've got to keep cutting angles and keep cutting angles. And against the guy that's got good takedowns, you're almost asking for it. So it would be a fucking good fight. I got to pick Stipe in that one all day, though.
I get you. I wouldn't disagree with that, but I'm just thinking like Stipe's got to fight somebody. And you look at the matchups and how everything's working out, and it's kind of looking like it's Volkov or Blades right now. So,
yeah. Oh my God. Well, that or if they keep fucking with Ngannou, maybe he fights Gan for the vacant belt. That feels about as likely as anything else.
That fight's booked. I'm not so worried about that.
All right.
Okay, we need to talk about Hamza Chimaev because I've got two things to say. This was both terrifying and scary, and this guy's clearly fucking legit. I will say this, though. What happens if you get through that first 4 minutes? That is the question with this guy, because you look at him at the weigh-in on the scale, he looked like death. He explodes. It is high, fast twitch, explosive, everything for that first 4 minutes. And I think every fight he's ended pretty much in the first 6 or 7 minutes. I don't know what happens if you get him through that. And Li Jingliang's kind of... He didn't really get started, but he got suckered in really fucking easily. He got fooled by the ha-ha, and it suckered him into throwing a high shot. And it's just like, dude, come on. You can't go for an overhand to start off. It's what he wanted you to do. And initially he defended well, and then just a terrible situation. And I think Hamza is seriously strong. He's clearly grappling is just of an extreme level. I don't know what happens if you get him through that first 5 minutes.
Well, I'd like to see what happens when you force him to actually make weight. That would be question one for me. That howling motherfucker.
He made weight. So this is what happened because I watched it. He did try to cheat. He missed weight the first time, right? By half a pound or whatever, looking like shit. He came back out and was leaning on the towel. And this is when it got controversial because he didn't calculate things right. And his weight came in at 166 pounds, to which obviously they all started basically going to themselves, either the scale is broken or something's going on here, because they know there is no way this human's lost 5.5 pounds in the space of 40 minutes. When he then comes back out, they instruct him to keep his hands fully raised, and he does make the 171. So,
I've only seen it with him with his hands on the towel, like literally the whole fucking time.
The whole time, yeah, but that ended up with a weight of 166 pounds. So, and the thing is okay, when he then didn't cheat, he was on weight. So you're thinking like, why would he be cheating if he was on weight? And he clearly weighed in successfully and legally first time round, and been half a pound over. I think he was just fucking out of it, man. I think he was just exhausted, and you're tired, and you've already had to do this, and now you're doing it again, and you're kind of leaning on it because you're a little tired, because he was 171, so he'd obviously weighed himself backstage, and they said, okay, you're on weight now, we can now do your second weigh-in. It did look a little dodgy. If he'd been doing that and that's what got him to 171 and nobody said anything, I'd be saying, what the fuck, he missed weight. But the fact that I then saw him weigh successfully and correctly and clearly not cheating and get to 171, I think it's an explainable situation.
Yeah, I'm watching it now. Just with the hands up like a twat. Yeah, because I thought the weigh-in video showed the 166 reading, and then they reset and did it again while he still had his hands on the towel. Look, I had read before that this guy had a fucking tank, that he was a cardio machine. and then he got COVID, and then coming back, things were completely different, and he was really struggling. I find it hard to write him off at this stage. You know, he might be like one of those Colby Covington guys, just keeps going and going and going. But
who do you think beats him in the top 5?
I'll
be honest, because I'm going to say this right off the bat because he's not in the top 5 anymore. Masvidal, I think, gets eaten alive by this human being.
Man, it's so hard to say because, again, Li Jingliang was the first kind of legit fighter I was going to see him go up against outside of GM3, which was, you know, ate that shot, went straight down, is what it is. I don't know at what point I can keep making excuses for his opponents, but at the same time, I haven't truly seen his level. And it's hard to say that you get that lucky 4 times in a row, but yeah, I don't know if anyone does. I mean, if anyone does, right? Dorino or Usman, maybe Wonder Boy coming at it from a different angle, but I really don't fucking know. I need to see this guy fight more. It's infuriating.
Yeah, it sounds like he really wants to fight Nate Diaz. And Nate Diaz has been responding on Twitter, or I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was a screenshot of Jing Liang getting choked out. He said something like, what these black belts doing, showing off tapping purple belts like it's something to brag about, or something like that. So he seems to be kind of suggesting that it doesn't count. You know, you're not doing it to the real tough guy, to the real level guys. And I thought Jing Liang had a real shot, but looking back on it, he never had the takedown defense to be able to deal with it. And he was probably a little too amped up into trying to land the big shot, that he was always going to overreach early and get himself exposed. Leon Edwards, I don't think is enough of a finisher. I think to beat this guy, you've got to have that moment where you can put him out.
Yeah, he can't take a lot of big shots either. You know, any shot can potentially rock him. I like that matchup for Rocky. Yeah, man, I think outside of Dorino, Usman, and maybe Wonder Boy,
it's tough. It's tough titties for the rest.
Yeah, man. I mean, say 5 years ago, I'd be like, definitely Wonder Boy. I'd love to see Wonder Boy take this guy out, but Wonder Boy these days, I don't know. Fuck it. We got to see him fight again, though.
Yeah. The fact that he carried him over to Dana White before slamming him was, this guy
That's
is
pretty cold.
This guy's no fucking joke. And let's look further down the card. Ankalaev, really glad that I did actually pick Ankalaev instead of almost fucking going with Volkan for my pick, because he's just so good, man. He's good everywhere. You know, he's got future champ written all over him.
Yeah. Like we said, if he's got a flaw in his game, it's that he's too strong, too athletic. He can tap quick enough to fuck himself out of that Paul Craig fight. Man, the guy's a fucking beast. I took that fight against Kutalaba when a lot of guys weren't, were really trying to stay away from Kutalaba. And even Kutalaba being an absolute twat immediately before the fight, still guys at the end of it, like, yeah, I'll fucking fight him again. Yeah, no worries. Let's do it. I got an easy one here. Yeah, fuck it. I'll do it the hard way. Let's go again. I just think the guy's a monster.
We're about to learn, in my opinion, how much love the UFC have for Anthony Smith, because there's 3 fights that they could give Anthony Smith next, in my opinion, that show whether or not they like him. If they really like him, they're going to give him the Rakic fight again. If they like him, they're going to give him the Santos rematch. If they don't really believe or like Anthony Smith anymore, they're going to give him Ankalaev.
Yeah, and that would be a great fight for Ankalaev. I mean, if they updated the rankings already.
I'd imagine Ankalaev is going to be somewhere around 7, and I believe Anthony Smith is 6.
Just check in. Is Sly actually going to drop in on this episode at all?
I don't believe so.
He threatened a guest appearance, but...
He did, but... doesn't always happen.
So Smith's at 4. No, this hasn't been changed. Still says Blachowicz is the champ. No, never mind. But yeah, currently he's at 7 and Smith is at 4. That would certainly be a great fucking fight. I mean, if not that fight, he's going to have a hard time getting a lot of the guys above him to fight him at this moment.
Yeah.
If I'm Ankalaev, I sit and wait and fill in when someone else is trying to duck me, just come in at the last minute and take that fight there and then.
Not a bad
Just
shout.
stay ready.
For Volkan, do you think they cut him?
Yeah, I think he came in before they were really kind of slashing salaries. I think he's getting paid a little bit more than most of the guys around him. I think he's a big risk to be cut.
Is that 3 on the bounce for him now?
I'm not sure. Let's have a look. See.
Maybe 3 of the last 4. He lost to Yuri Prochaska. He lost to...
Yeah, he got the wins over Latifi and Rakic. So he's 2-2 in his last 4 fights. But he did have the 3 fight skid before Latifi. You know, obviously he had the title shot with DC. Then he lost to Smith, then Reyes. Gets 2 back, loses 2 more. I don't know. It really depends how many fights are left on his contract.
Yeah. Maybe he's only 2 on the skid and he's fighting top 10 guys. So I thought this was 3 on the skid for him. So maybe there's hope. But yeah, I think he's one of those. He had his moment when the division wasn't at its deepest. And I feel like as we're seeing guys kind of rise up the ranks, we're kind of seeing where Volkan's place really was in this division.
Yeah, I mean, he caught OSP at a good time. Jimmy Manoa was over the hill. DC, he had no shot against. You know, when he got the Latifi fight, Latifi's old as fuck. And the Rakic one's a good win, but close fucking fight.
Rakic. He's clearly a really good fighter, but I think Anthony Smith had was all over the shop when he fought him. And, you know, he's kind of shit the bed a little in the Santos fight.
A little bit. He is kind of a young fighter. He's got a lot of talent. He's only got, you know, that 1 loss. Is it 1 loss in the UFC or 1 loss overall?
I think it's 2 losses in total, but I'm not 100% sure. Not 100% sure. Because he had the loss to Volkan, which a lot of people think he won. Not sure. Should we go on to the prelims quickly?
Yeah, let's keep moving it.
Feature fight on the prelims. Amanda Hebass against Jandidova. Jandidova is one of the toughest fights in the division for about a round and a half. Every one of these up-and-coming, really talented strawweights that we've seen come up against her that have beaten her, you know, basically Mackenzie Dern and now obviously Hebass, she gives them a fucking fight and a half, but she just doesn't maintain it.
Yeah, you know, her wins, I mean, the biggest UFC scout she's taken so far is Felice Herrig, which isn't nothing, you know, and that was a great early finish, but yeah, lost to Esparza, Dern, now Hebass. I really like watching her fight. She is tough. She has good technique kind of everywhere, but just doesn't seem to be able to put away these other fighters. And Hebass looked fucking great, man.
I think she recovered well from a poor first round where it just wasn't quite working. I don't think she had, you know, it's interesting because I was watching this with Sly and I even said it to him as it was starting. Like, the interesting thing about this fight is who's going to feel like they're more comfortable on the ground. And Jandidova clearly felt like she had the advantage on the ground. And Hebass wasn't really able to get her in the position, you know, the same judo throws I've seen her get everyone else down with weren't fucking working. And she was able to recover from that, put together effective striking, which I thought was really well improved. And she wasn't just looking for one big shot. She was touching her combinations. Well, this was good from her. This was good. I think there's a lot of improvements that need to be made in Hebass's game still. You know, when she was on that initial run before the Rodriguez loss, everyone was talking about her just being the next thing. She beat Mackenzie Dern. She absolutely smashed Randa Marcos. And I still think that the hype is real, but I think we've just got to temper it a little bit. You can see that there's gaps. You can see that there's improvements that still need to be made. What's good is that she's clearly a ranked fighter in a top division, and she's making improvements every single time that we see her.
Yeah, for sure. This was a nice bounce back. And you know, shit, that Rodriguez one already has aged well. So
yeah,
I really think Jandidova as well, though. I think she's going to be a top 10 fighter, you know, for a while in this division. I think she is really fucking good. Hebass just had a really, really nice night.
Weird walkout, though, Jandidova. Very weird walkout.
What does she do for the walkout? Doesn't she just kind of like walk out?
No, she was wearing like a kind of fisherman's hat and doing this sort of very sort of weird dance that felt. It was odd. It was odd.
Felt quite Brazilian though. You know, see a lot of them come out, not always dancing the best. Shit, who's Henan Barao? Henan Barao used to come out dancing sometimes, like you thought he had no coordination at all. and then he'd go fight the way that Henan Barao fights. But I don't know. Some of these walkouts, I guess a lot of people are trying to act like they're having a happy fun time when actually inside there's just a mass of like nerves and anxiety and there's all these fucking lights and faces.
That's true. Who knows? But she's I don't know if it's a mental thing with Jandidova or a physical thing, but she's just, every fight I've seen her in, it just gets to that moment in the second round where it feels like it's slipping away from her. Once it slips away, it just doesn't feel like she's able to kind of reinsert herself and get the momentum back. I think they said in her entire career, she's never won a third round. You know, that's at a certain point, you've got to say, okay, maybe I won the Invicta belt. But you're in the UFC now, and the real emerging top talents are you need more than 2 rounds in the tank.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a psychological thing. It could just be, you know, the rub of it, the way it's kind of broke for her. But yeah, when you have that problem, what people are really saying is that if you don't get an easy victory, you're not winning fights. So you've got to find a way to really game plan so that you're really fucking putting it on girls for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, ideally, that you're putting it on girls for 25 minutes. But yeah, you're definitely right. She needs to address that if that is true. Jesus Christ.
All right, let's move down the cards. Featherweight, Ricardo Ramos versus Zubaida Tukhugov. This was a really fun fight. Both guys had their moments. Tukhugov definitely, I thought, won the fight quite clearly for me. Started very well, rocked Ramos in the first round. But he came back and was able to always find his little pockets in the exchanges where he was able to land something or give him a problem.
Yeah.
You certainly felt like there was, you know, he felt like Ramos maybe had that one shot that he needed that could have completely turned the fight. He seemed to have just a little bit more power, although he didn't have the same kind of speed or technique or ability to land in volume. But in the end, Tukhugov gets it done, you know, and he's had a couple of moments where he's looked a little rocky, but it feels like he's starting to really put it together. And he enjoyed, you know, how do I put this? For a guy who's from a region that's known for grappling, he has a love of striking.
Where's he from?
Tukhugov. Isn't he from the Dagestani region as well?
Ooh, I don't know. Maybe. Although, to be fair, it really is kind of just Makhachev and Khabib that are like the grapplers. A lot of the rest of them have kind of got like an all-round game. I mean, even what's the one down at bantamweight in Bellator?
Magomedov.
No, it begins with a U. I can't think. He's the kickboxing one. He does choke people out, but it's kind of after he fucks them up on the feet first.
I can't think.
I don't know why the UFC site would have it on there. Never mind. Let's anyway, give me your thoughts on Durev Kopylov while I look up Volkov's smashing
Kopylov
out of it.
is a tough fucking son of a bitch, man. And you know what? Duraev is as well, because his eye was fucked. But Kopilov's nose was fucked. His face was fucked. There was blood in his eyes, in his mouth. He looked absolutely exhausted. And yet he still managed to survive and make something, try to make something happen in that third round. And I'll be honest, I don't think he was as far away as people might think from turning the tide there in that third round. With the way Duraev's eye was swollen, it was clearly a fractured orbital. I think he only needed a couple of good clean shots and he could have maybe swung it, but he'd been so tired out in that second round that he was literally resting on his knees at certain points, trying to sum up enough energy to be able to throw one shot back. But he did it, man, and it was a bloody gory fight. But he definitely showed enough to stay in that fight, and he might have lost, but fuck me, what a way to lose.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of almost hard to criticize him for loading up on the shots where he almost steals the fight back, but shit, you can't ride your luck like that at this level. A fun fight. It was a fun fight. And Duraev, man, heart of a lion for finishing the fight with that shit falling apart on the side of his face. But man, Kopylov really needs to kind of retool his game. He's got some power. He's definitely got the fucking grit for it. Just
the thing is, though, I thought he did really well in the first round. If you look at, in many ways, it's the common theme of the night. He makes one mistake in the second round that gets him basically on his back, getting the shit kicked out of him for 4.5 minutes. And it's unfortunate for the same reasons that we're saying that you've got to be more careful, Dan Hooker, you've got to be more careful, Li Jingliang, you've got to be more careful, Yan. It's the same thing. It's the only thing I'd say is he's a younger fighter, so I can understand that these mistakes are going to happen, more.
Yeah.
Because you're still learning your craft. Grappling isn't something that's natural to you. But for the fact that it went so horribly wrong from that one mistake, and he was still able to survive that and mount any type of offense in the third round, I think, shows a lot of character and shows a lot of improvement. It's everything in round one was good. It's just that, he made a mistake that he paid for a full 4.5 minutes in such a way that he was never really going to be able to kind of overturn that at that point.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to work with. He's a good fighter. He's a talented fighter, but he needs to put it together up today. Oof, yeah, but well, Duraev's not going to be feeling great either.
True. Talking about ugly motherfuckers. We got to talk about this ref, man. We got to talk about this fight. You've got an undefeated guy, Sandhagen, used to be in this fucking French Special Forces, tough as all shit. Yes, the guy is tough and undefeated, but that fight was over 12 different times. I mean, a solid 12 different times you could have put an end in that fight and nobody would have questioned a single thing. And he might have still been on his feet, but he was, done, signed out, covered up, save me ref. And that saving never came. And the fact that Zaleski dos Santos almost had it slip out of his grasp because he'd expended so much energy beating this defenseless guy who wasn't fighting back. And then the eye poke where you're thinking, for fuck's sake, can you imagine if that gets done as a no contest?
Well, no, it was the third round, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then he takes the point and you're thinking, if these fucking judges haven't given this a 10-8 in the second round and they give Sandhagen this third round, we've got a draw. And it's like, Jesus fucking Christ. And let's be honest here as well. I think the only reason why he was still on his feet is that dos Santos kind of felt bad for him. He kind of figured all it took was just a couple of extra shots on numerous occasions, and the ref was just going to step in. And I do think he could have, if he'd kind of really exploded to try and hurt him and knock him completely out in one of those moments, it could have been over. But he's not that kind of guy. He saw a guy that was quitting. It was done. I'm just doing the perfunctory. Come on, ref. No. Really? No. And that ref got taken off
Yeah,
duties for the rest of the night. And
as
I'm kind
he
of glad that
fucking
they
was
did that.
supposed to. Yeah, mate. Well, definitely in the second round, like when it happened, Zaleski dos Santos just stops throwing that head kick. Like he doesn't want to kill the guy. But then I'd say kind of maybe about halfway through that third round, Sandini starts catching him every now and again. And from there on, it was Dos Santos was like, well, I'm just not getting fucking caught with anything stupid then. So I am just going to pepper you and just take this. Yeah, the eye poke, atrocious refereeing. The guy looked like a fucking undead, lurchy version of Steve Mazzagatti. It was just absolutely atrocious. I don't know I haven't seen a ref refuse to stop a fight that badly since fucking Fedor fought Maldonado in Russia, and they were refusing to let a Brazilian win on Russian soil.
Even the eye poke, man, we were talking the week before about sort of being delighted that, Herzog had taken the point at the first offense because his argument had been, I'd warned you about the fingers multiple times already, and now the consequences happened. I didn't see Santos get a single warning all fight. I didn't even see his fingers that outstretched for most of the fight. So when the ref took the point, I think he's genuinely sitting there thinking, like, at no point has this come up. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, man, that ref shit the bed hard. And man, it's taken years of Sandini's life, no doubt. Like that dude's not probably gonna have another fucking fight feel the same way ever again. This is just brutal.
Even if that beating doesn't do any long-term damage, even if you remove the health side of it, that is a young guy making his UFC debut that earned only his show money and is now probably going to be out for a minimum 6 months, maybe 8 months, maybe longer, at a point in his career where he really needs to be fighting 3 to 4 times a year to be able to pay the bills and live a decent life based on the money that he's earning, really getting some win bonuses into the mix as well. And now he's not fighting for 9 months. He's not training for 4 months properly. So he's not improving his skills. Mark Goddard, who was, absolutely, I think he took on all of the fights that ref was meant to have for the rest of the night. And he was sitting sort of cage side during that fight. So obviously the commentary team had his reactions to everything to kind of validate their own thoughts. And one of the things that Mark Goddard says quite honestly, he says, I don't ref every single fight the same. The willingness that I am allowing guys to take damage is different for guys on the prelims making their debut compared to guys competing for a world title fight. And the reasons for that is there's more on the line. This is something that they built up to, but also guys in a title fight, I have got more evidence that I can trust, that I need to give them the benefit of that doubt, that they are able to survive these extra things and challenge and get through this adversity because they've earned it. That's not the case with somebody if it's the first time that I've ever seen you and you're making your debut. And why would you want it to? You're earning maximum 40 grand unless you get a win bonus. How much are you willing to risk for 40 grand? The title challenger, they're getting potentially millions of dollars. This is their whole life being changed in that fight. The stakes of these things are not the same.
Yeah, I mean, shit. Most title challenges are probably on more like 100K, 200K.
But it's what you can get if you win, is the...
Yeah. But yeah, it's a good point. Man, I feel so bad for Sandini. I mean, I'm sure he's won a few fans over, but like at what fucking price? And like I said, it's not just about the money either. It's like, it's a good time in your career to be taking lots of fights against similar tenured fighters and build up that experience that you need. He is going to have to sit out for a little while because there was several concussions sustained there, I imagine. And concussions close to each other is really fucking bad. It's awful. That guy, I don't know if he can like sue the commission out there who actually kind of does it for like Abu Dhabi. I don't even know.
I don't know. Here's a question for you, because I feel like, listen, we've seen a lot of fights where guys sustain damage. If we wind the clock back to Chris Moutinho when he fought Sean O'Malley, I felt like he'd earned the right to see the final bell, even though he took an insane amount of strikes. Here's the big differential. At no point in that had he stopped walking forward, and at no point had he wobbled, been rocked, seemed like he was on the verge of being finished, pretty much. He was always in that fight. And so I think you have to make an allowance. I think it's not so much the number of strikes landed. It was the visible reaction from Denis when he was being hit on numerous different occasions that should have given an indication that this guy is no longer in this fight. And the only reason that his output turned around in the third round is that Dos Santos had exhausted himself beating this guy up to the point where he'd actually been able to get a moment and recover. And I think also when a fight gets to that point as well, how can you mentally go into a third round with the same killer instinct when when you're already sort of mentally and sort of consciously processing that the ref isn't stopping this fight when he should, that this guy has taken an unholy beating, those own thoughts of humanity and compassion and all this kind of stuff, and this is still a sport, right, kind of creep into your mind. It's not easy to then put on the same level of aggression and effectiveness against a guy like that. It's like kicking somebody when he's down. Some people can, a lot of people really can't, even in a sport like MMA. That comes into the factor into the equation as well. It's like once you get to the point where the opponent is literally kind of trying to take it easy on you because he feels bad, something's gone horribly wrong in the fight.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who was that Jeffrey Horn fight way back in the day where the ref wouldn't stop it, his opponent wouldn't quit, so in the end he quit just beating the shit out of him, and just persistently went for the sub until he was able to choke him out instead, just to show mercy because he couldn't hit the guy again.
Well, I don't remember that, but Tyson Fury fought Chisora the second time. It was really similar. In the final round that they fought, Tyson Fury was he spent more time talking to the ref than fighting Chisora. So he's just pointing out, he's just like, this guy's got nothing. Come on, man. Like, I can't, this isn't competitive anymore. I can't do this anymore. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate when it happens. And it tends to happen with the local refs. You don't see this from a Herzog from the elite guys anymore. Now that Mazzagatti and
Mario
Mazzagatti and Yamasaki.
Yeah, Mario Yamasaki.
Those two are the worst, and they're gone, fortunately. Zaleski moves on. I'll tell you who else is moving on is Leron Murphy. Oh, no, sorry, I skipped out of fights. Michael, last name I can't say.
Alexejczyk.
This was pretty much, I thought he looked really good in this fight. This was impressive. Those body shots, that uppercut. Got it done. Easy.
I like that he's changed the nickname. Lord is gone. Something way cooler in Polish has come in. Yeah, man. I'm quietly becoming a fan. First time I saw this dude walk out, I'm like, I don't think you belong in this weight class, bro. I think maybe you should be cutting down some. But he shut me up, and shit, I'm on the hype train. I'm a big fucking fan of this dude now. Like, obviously he came in. What was the first UFC fight he had? Yeah, Jesus. So a no contest with Khalil Roundtree. Beats John Vellante, which even in John Vallante's heyday wasn't really that impressive a feat. And Tiglov, I don't even remember that well. And then he loses to OSP Jimmy Crute. Okay, so he wasn't ready for boys that big that early on. But now, 2-fight win streak. The Bukowskis fight was a fun fight, close fight. This fight was a fucking great fight. I'm really excited to see this guy fight again. I don't think he's ever going to crack the rankings, but Jesus, he's fun to watch.
He competes.
And he can fucking throw these uppercuts.
Yeah, and he's beating a tough, undefeated fighter. I think that fight was booked to set the undefeated guy up. And Michelle's kind of
fun scrap. Well, he's a very smart brawler. he can really work with the guy up in close quarters. This was just a really fun fucking fight. I think he was booked to be, an exciting, scrappy fight. Give Gamzatov kind of a taste of the UFC, but ultimately continue to build that undefeated fighter. And Alexei plays spoiler. I fucking loved it.
Tell you what I enjoyed. Leroy and
Yes.
Murphy knocking Amir Khani's soul into the nether region.
This was beautiful, man. This was fucking beautiful. Between rounds, his corner are like, don't go back to like that southpaw stance, because every time you do that, it's when he shoots. And I guess it's just in his head. Leroy's like a lot sharper than I give him credit for with his fight IQ. Because as soon as he overextends, follows through, and he finds himself like basically in that southpaw stance again, he knows the shot's coming, and he just fucking lifts that knee. Oh, beautiful.
He doesn't
goes on to say, I knew he was out. I knew he was out. Key the highlight, just at least one more punch in there, though.
It's not just that he made the adjustment. It's that he listened to his corner's advice and was able to apply it in a different way from what they were intending. That is a fight IQ. And listen, first round didn't go well for him, man. He ended up where he didn't want to be. Amir Khani was putting his ground game in, but that is what you fucking do when a guy wants to take you to the ground. No leg kicks, no body kicks, knees and uppercuts. It's the solution. Masvidal, Leroy and Murphy. This shit fucking works. I'm not saying
it
it's
works
easy.
when you know.
I'm
it
not
works
saying
when you
it's
know the
easy.
shot's coming.
True.
You have to know that shot is coming, though. That's the thing.
Well, that's just about knowing whether you throw the uppercut or the knee.
Oh, well, no, because either way, you don't want to necessarily be like overextended or off balance. Even if it is just kind of going for the uppercut, you don't want to give an easy entry to the clinch. There's so many different things you don't want to do. And if it's a guy that really is a good grappler, I definitely think that any way you can try and force the exchanges and dictate the exchanges so that you can predict these shots coming in is good for you. Spamming leg kicks, obviously not, but I do appreciate where Hooker was coming from in that. But yeah, man, countering anything is difficult. I think the best one I've ever seen was Barboza against Benil Dariush, because it wasn't until like the third or fourth time that Dariush goes back to the well on that combination for the takedown that, Barboza started reading it, and then it was just one nice, clean, like flying knee on the entry. Flying knee, sorry. Knees are good. Oh. Knees are good.
Leroy Murphy's the shit, man. This guy's super exciting. It's great to see an English fighter putting it together, looking hot in the bantamweight division. And he goes on, Amir Makwani. It's tough sometimes.
He is a good fighter, but this is 3 losses in a row. The guy's been in the UFC a long time and not been able to really kind of put it together successfully. The best you can kind of say about him is he's a really good fighter. Gets unlucky a lot. Puts on fun fights, but this might be it for him.
If this is it for him, it would be interesting that in many ways his career, you could argue, are bookmarked by the same technique.
Yeah, the Andy Ogle fight was his first fight, right? Yeah, that was a good fucking fight.
So, sort of out some poetic justice there. And I'll be honest, I was at the shops for the first 2 fights. Didn't see them.
Oh shit, I missed the first fight. I can't remember why I missed the first fight, but I did miss the first fight. I came in at the end of the first round for the Petrosky fight. So let me think back. Petrosky did look good. Hu Yaozong basically came in and fought, I think, Cyril Asker at heavyweight. Then he took a fight at light heavyweight. Now he's fighting a middleweight. Middleweight's definitely not his weight class. Guy looked lethargic. Guy looked like he couldn't really put the size advantage in there. Just looked very dehydrated and miserable. I also don't think that this guy necessarily is going to have a lot of success up at light heavyweight. I think he came in off for 3 wins, so I'm assuming he's a UFC PI guy over in China. I got to assume they're just going to keep him around as like a sparring partner for a bit, but this guy's probably on one of the lower salaries. I don't see him getting another UFC fight. I think that's going to be it for him. Petrosky, he said he was going to put the next guy out in space. This was a nice finish. The arm triangle, nice statement win. I'm trying to remember how he set it up now. Jesus, this is sloppy. I'm really sorry, man. I can't remember the sequence leading to the finish. I just remember walking away from it thinking, yeah, Petrosky's not looking too bad. This big-headed, thirsty motherfucker, though, that's cut too much weight. Yeah, I don't know about him.
Yeah. And Ulanbekov got a decision win against Nascimento, which neither of us saw. This was an excellent card. There was standout fights and talking points on the prelims. The main card, there was one great fight on the main card. I'd say the one average fight. The rest of it was really about the performances more than anything else. But statements are made, and my takeaway is you gotta be able to grapple in modern MMA.
Yeah, man. Fucking Dan, what are you doing? Anyway, talking about grappling and MMA. Clarissa Shields handed her first professional MMA loss. And
I've read about this. I have not seen it.
I also have not seen. I've seen the highlights, but I haven't seen it. I've seen the Kayla Harrison finish and the Ray Cooper finish as well. I'm kind of thinking about going back and watching PFL maybe tonight, actually. But we didn't give it enough love before. I will say that the Ray Cooper knockout, really great comeback win, really nice knockout. The guy apparently was getting absolutely handled. I mean, shit, did he previously beat him or lose to him? How many times have they fought? Let's look it up. Anyway, I think Ray Cooper and PFL, same with Kayla Harrison, if you win the tournament, they essentially retain your rights. So it would take a lot to get them fighting in one of the other organizations next year. I also don't think the UFC would really ever look to bring Kayla over for like a super fight with Nunes. I mean, she's only cut down to 45 once. If she's going to do it again, why do it against Nunes unless you're getting paid out of the arse, which I don't think the UFC would do. Still,
what the UFC want is they either want Rose or Whaley to establish themselves as the undisputed, dominant, wiped out all of the meaningful contenders strawweight champion so that they can book a super fight with Valentina, or they want Valentina and Nunes to run it back a third time.
Which I would watch, but I just feel like it's kind of a foregone conclusion.
Do you know the Weasel?
Like an MMA journalist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Weasel's been doing this recent feature, shout out to the Weasel, watch his channel, it's excellent, where he looks back at controversial or close fights to decide who really won, very much analyzing the judging criteria. And in the Nunes-Shevchenko rematch, he makes a very strong case that it's pretty much inarguable that Shevchenko won that fight. She landed way more clean strikes in critical rounds. It was very unfortunate. Had every right to be upset that she had. And listen, sometimes it happens. I'm a massive Nunes fan. I am a homer for Nunes all fucking day long. But I think that's a tough fight for Nunes.
Yeah. When Shevchenko is training and fighting at bantamweight, she can make it a close fight on her night. But if she is going from flyweight up to bantamweight against the chick that, you know, also fights very comfortably at featherweight, she's not getting any smaller as a bantamweight. You know, it's I feel that the size difference that was there in the first two fights is only going to be even more pronounced if they ever do a trilogy fight. And she kind of, the first one kind of caught Nunes at a time when she was a little less confident. That was the close fight, right? The rematch was the one where I was a bit more in favor of Nunes, I think.
Other way around.
Was it the other way around?
Okay.
Okay. Well, fuck. I still think the size difference is going to be too much of an issue at this stage. I don't know.
That's what Shevchenko. She was on Joe Rogan and she was asked this, and she said the only thing that makes it hard is size. She's like, technically, I'm by far better. I'm just
Yeah.
I'm way better, way better. It is, but it's a size element, and it's dealing with the size element, knowing that grappling exchanges might not go your way, and that's where the puzzle comes in. But she also said if she got that fight again, she wouldn't put any weight on for it. She'd fight it as she always is.
It works in certain terms of being able to do your game plan. If it doesn't pan out, you look like an idiot. If it does pan out, you're the new genius, doing everything the right way. Fuck.
What about what? Just sorry to go ahead. Don't mean to interject.
Very much like Izzy against Yan. It was just a size difference more than anything.
What about if they did it the other way? Rose or Whaley? Do you think either's got a chance against Shevchenko?
Oof. Jesus Christ. I would say Rose has a chance if Shevchenko tried to force herself down to straw weight, but at flyweight, nah, man. If Rose really tried to fill out and actually be like a 125-pound fighter, I think it would kind of change elements of her game too much. Yeah, I say Rose maybe, but at 115. I don't even know if Valentina could
She won't ever
make close to that. So, yeah.
It's funny though. She probably doesn't walk around at that much of a different weight from Rose. She walks around 131. She says she cut 6 pounds to make championship weight, and most of that she doesn't cut. Most of that is just the training camp. She loses.
Okay. Fair enough. So she's actually fighting at 125 more or less.
Yeah, about 128, 129, something like that.
Okay.
Crazy
by the way,
how strong she is.
Yeah, Magomed Karamov did win the first fight against RC3. I would love to see these two boys go at it again in another PFL season.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I think he's kind of really established himself this year, Ray Cooper.
Yeah. I mean, Magomed. This is why I always forget his fucking name, man. Magomed Karamov had a great season as well. I mean, shit. A lot of people had a pretty good fucking season, apart from Anthony Pettis. And Shoeface won at 205, 185 or 205. I think he was doing 205.
Oh, good for Shoeface.
Yeah, and this weekend we got Bellator as well with the lightweight scrap. Keely against Pitbull, the other Pitbull.
Fuck.
They're tricky.
Mate, there is so much fights on this weekend. There's Bellator, there's Canelo versus Plant, and there's UFC 268, which that whole card is fucking fire. Absolute fire. 2 rematches. I mean, that's pretty much it. There's no other news to talk about. Everything is basically post UFC 267 or pre to UFC 268 at this point. The countdown is out. I have not watched it yet. Although, I mean, I feel like it's going to be pretty self-explanatory, apart from maybe the Gaethje Chandler one. It's going to be 2 winners of the previous fight going, yeah, I won the fight. I'm the champ. I'm going to do what champs do. And 2 other people going, whatever happened in that last fight was a bad night from me. I've made all of these changes. Look at me. I've cut my hair. The hair's different. Look, I've grown a beard. I didn't have a beard before. I was clean shaved. I'm a new man.
Man, it's going to be fucking exciting. There's so much good.
I know we're going to do the pick show later in the week, but quick question. Do you think either of the title fights go in the different direction than they did the first time around? And if so, which one do you think is more likely?
No, I think the title is gonna stay with the current champs. I do not rate Covington that highly, just in terms of where I think he's at mentally. He's a good volume fighter against special athletes. He's always going to struggle. Usman's a big, hard-hitting guy, and Usman has only gotten better at what he did to beat Colby since that first fight. In doing those specific things. Yeah, I think Colby's going to be in for a short night. Rose Zhang Weili, I think, is going to be a much more competitive fight than the first one, but it's got to be all Rose all day, right?
Team Rose, motherfucker. Team Rose.
Yeah.
I've got a feeling Gaethje is going to lose. I've been thinking about this one hard. Even though he doesn't get hit as much, he still gets hit.
It's you know, can he win that first round, tire him out, chew him up with that heavy leg kick? Yeah, I'll save it for the pick show. That one's going to be a toss up for me. I really don't know.
Well, in that case, I think that's pretty much all of the bases covered, mate. So I think for now, we'll say bid you adieu. We'll be back
Bye,
later
Laurie.
this week for the pick show.
Bye, Dave.
Till then, guys. Bye, Dave. Bye, Laurie. Bye, Trifo. Have a great week until then. Peace out, mate. Have a good one.
Bye, bud. You too.
Bye-bye.